Ba-da-da. Nice entrance, right? Very nice. Hello, there's no Bob Gag today, but I wanted to take this time to first remind you that there's a navigation bar down below, but second and most importantly, to remind American viewers who are registered to vote, who haven't already voted, to do so this coming Tuesday. I mean, yeah, okay, I know, politics in my video games, the horror, but I'm saying this unapologetically because really, we never could afford to ignore the power that we have as voters, but many of us do. And there are no excuses. The weaknesses of the Electoral College, for example, isn't something to ignore, but not enough of a reason to ignore what happens locally either. I don't want my sales tax to go up, right? But I do want money going to schools that are struggling to adapt to virtual learning. I care about my niece and nephew. Voting isn't easy. In fact, it's pretty exhausting to learn how to do it right without just listening to the ads and the commercials, and even then, you know what I mean? But I want to live in a country where a lot more people vote because that means our intentions as a people are made known. Think of it like how you want a certain something or other in the world of Warcraft. You want your views represented, right? Exercising none of your power as a consumer isn't going to change anything, so it's the same difference. Except for like everything, but hopefully you get what I mean. Links to check on your voting status will be in the description below, so thanks for putting up with that, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, the show that is still going to remind you to vote despite you skipping ahead. You think you're so clever, huh? Let's show some love to the family over on Twitch, especially a few special folks who rained gifted subs on us. Thank you very much. But don't forget our wonderful patrons, including newcomer David. Hey David, nice to hear from you, and let's get hyped! Again! Shadowlands has been re-announced. Not renounced, but re-announced. Yeah, so here's the skinny. In less than 2 weeks, on November 10th, the pre-patch event will begin that will have players farming the crap out of Icecrown, and would-be zombie armies will attempt to farm the rest of the world behind their backs. The Shadowlands expansion itself will launch 2 weeks later worldwide on November 23rd or 24th, depending on where you live. We have 2 weeks until the 8th of December, when Season 1 of Shadowlands begins. You know, with normal raids, Mythic Plus, PvP, and all that jazz. The week after, Raid Finder starts to open, Mythic Raids open up, and the race to World First begins. There's a lot to be excited for, a lot to prep for, and a lot of questions, but first, a lot to react to because this is a somewhat unusual date. November 23rd will be exactly 16 years since the original launch of World of Warcraft, so Blizzard is no stranger to launching a title the week of Thanksgiving, a holiday that most of us American folk care about because we get to stay home for a whole weekend. Yeah, and Mythic Raiding, aka the Race to World First, just starts like a week before Christmas. The response to the schedule has been pretty mixed. On the one hand, a lot of folks, at least over here in the US, are like, woo, Shadowlands, and then, time off for Thanksgiving / more Shadowlands time. And the so-called majority of players, those who don't play at a competitive level, couldn't care less about the Mythic Raid schedule. Maybe they'll have Twitch open on the big TV while opening presents or something. On the flip side are those of us who are upset that with the launch of Shadowlands during what's normally a time for family gatherings, we get an increase of the risk that players will run into friction. Of course, it's no secret that normal was thrown out the window months ago. Regardless, these critics stand by earlier statements from Blizzard that they try to avoid release schedules like these, which are very carefully worded non-promises. And then there's everyone else in between. For example, one person's holiday might be another person's busiest time of the year. It interferes with other game releases, and well, everyone's circumstances are different. What I found especially disturbing is that on social media, pundits and critics are trying to wield the entirety of the WoW community like it's a club, and swinging at Blizzard, prompting game director and Grinch Who Stole Christmas Ian Hezekostas to explain that even the pace of releasing content is part of game design. The time between expansion launch and season start is 2 weeks. I've talked about this earlier, that maybe adding a third week wouldn't be so bad, but more than that would be too much. That's because for every week, players can farm more. They can maybe get another legendary, power up more conduits, farm more of the Maw for Stygia, get more rep to unlock recipes, get higher renown access, more soulbound traits or whatever. So yes, this could have been retuned to balance out the pacing, space things out, and limit growth, but hey, I thought you guys don't like time gating. We've seen the fatigue that came from patch 8.1 and having to wait 6 weeks before the Battle of Dazar'alor began. And even though I said this was a possibility, imagine the pushback if Shadowlands was delayed all the way to mid-December, not for more polish and improvements, but to cater to the competitive raid scene and have the raid stuff start at the beginning of 2021. I know of at least one top player who spoke off the record that they don't believe Blizzard factors the race to world first at all when planning launches like these, and despite that, top players would raid whenever anyway, because that is what top players just do. We're gamers, right? And the way I see it, gamers adapt, persevere, and win, or at least they deal with what's dealt. As a guild and a raid leader, it's on me to keep my team entertained and, I guess, feel welcome. So not everyone in my guild is going to be binge leveling the week Shadowlands launches because of work and children and other responsibilities. I'm going to reassure those players that it's okay and that we're still going to have fun together. And raiding is going to be a little bit inconsistent throughout the holidays, but guess what? A lot of raid teams and guilds are going to be in the same boat. Not enough people for tonight's raid? Cool, we'll do something else together. We'll figure it out. If 2020 wasn't 2020, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. Maybe we'd be playing Shadowlands right now, or even sooner. And I'd be talking about what happened at BlizzCon just last week. Maybe patch 9.1 announcements, who knows? Blizzard did say that they don't want to release during the holidays, but neither they nor we get what we want every time. But we're gamers. We deal with it. So the first milestone that we'll hit comes in less than 2 weeks, the pre-expansion event that we haven't seen on the PTR for what I think has been months now. My first instinct is to presume that what we've seen is what we're going to get. That includes dailies up in Icecrown, rares to farm in the same zone, and periodic zombie invasions. The distractions here lead to cosmetic rewards / item level catch-ups for our mains and alts. But I'm left a little bit anxious. Are there changes to be expected since we haven't seen anything for a while? Will I be able to turn significant portions of Suramar into undead strongholds? Will I be able to ruin a Nathanos raid with a well-timed plague explosion? A lot has been covered, but we know very little, or at least, I don't know, maybe I'm just hyping myself up for a surprise and mismanaging my expectations, thinking that there's going to be more to it when the reality tends to suggest otherwise. Odds are pretty good that sometime between now and launch will be the 9.0.2 patch, if anyone remembers that's a thing. Some things in the patch will be noticeable, some class changes like the Fel Guards getting a stun, and even character customizations like additional eye colors for high elves. See what I did there? But the bulk of the patch is meant to replace what would have been in for the Shadowlands launch to what's actually going to be there. Whether that means we're going to see another background downloader or a long maintenance and maybe another round of your add-ons breaking remains to be seen. And then of course, there's the launch. If you're planning on leveling or, I don't know, sitting in front of a black screen, you can count on any number of streamers to keep you company, including me. I'm going to be broadcasting my entire leveling experience, keeping you and my guild company, answering questions, and probably declining to do anything as a group. I mean, I'm already talking to you guys, like, isn't that good enough? The launch also falls in the middle of a few in-game events. Pilgrim's Bounty starts that week, which for all I know might introduce some really broken food items. The 16-year anniversary event did overlap with the Shadowlands launch, but no longer. The current in-game calendar now reflects the bonus begins on the 1st of November and extends until the 22nd, making it longer than what it would have been, but without the impact that a rep or an experience bonus would give during Shadowlands. Was the fun really detected and nerfed though? What's the worst that would happen with what could have been a week-long experience and reputation buff? We'd all get to level 60 faster, that's for sure. Alliance especially would enjoy a very sizable buff thanks to their likely war mode bonus. But in our first playthrough to max level, endgame is accessible not by reaching level 60, but by completing all 4 zone campaigns. Basically, even if we started Shadowlands at level 60, nothing would change. Our alt would benefit much more from this buff thanks to the Threads of Fate feature that we can optionally choose, but that's only accessible after reaching endgame for that first time. As for reputation though, there is one thing to point out. The Avowed faction is a reputation in Revendreth that, in so few words, you can hard farm it by killing mobs in the zone, one of the dungeons, and by summoning these special mobs that you also kill. The significance is that this faction sells a recipe at Revered 4 enchanters to make reagents that are required for many legendaries. So whoever gets access to this recipe first on their server will suddenly be sought out very heavily. A reputation buff would be mighty nice, but is that enough to be concerned about? I should point out that legendaries are still hard gated by Soul Ash from Torghast, which is capped at 100 per week. So sure, we're gonna have a bunch of rich alchemists, but the economy for legendaries won't exactly be broken. Putting this aside, there's only so much reputation you can earn per week, bonus or not. And in a week, this anniversary bonus that would be gone. And then the Dark Moonfair buff would come in at the start of Season 1. It's a smaller buff, but I suspect that it won't be nerfed for Shadowlands content. So with all of that said, it would be misleading for me to say that there's literally nothing lost with the anniversary buff change, but no one's gonna be crippled here. Oh, and did I forget to mention that next Rammus is going to open up on WoW Classic on December 3rd? Yeah, good luck squeezing that in before Season 1 of Shadowlands starts. Okay, actually, maybe you can squeeze that in before Season 1 starts. Huh. Now let's circle back and think this over. We've been on a really wild ride since the start of the Shadowlands Alpha, and now, with less than a month before launch, what burning questions are left? What is left undone? What concerns still remain? One of my biggest concerns, Conduit, has been smoothed out a lot over the past couple of weeks. I can now see that Conduit upgrades also come from not just dungeons or vendors, but raids and world quests and Covenant calling chests. It's basically going to rain conduits, and there is a path for all players to max this out. There's no hard divide between hardcore and casual players. Conduit switching will still probably be a concern in the short run, so I hope that there's a kind of knob that Blizzard can turn that will let them respond to how players react to all that fat fingering. And you know that there's going to be people who spend all their Conduit energy just so they can post it on Twitter for some fake rage. Meanwhile, I still haven't heard much on Renown catch-ups. Maybe they're dropping in dungeons, I don't know, but commenters, please correct me if I'm wrong, but at the very least, I haven't seen catch-ups in world quests or Covenant chests, not yet. The Twisting Corridors, which is the 18th floor climb in Torghasts, feels a little bit barren at the moment. I mean, yes, there is a mount for climbing the highest layer, and of course there's replay value in playing with different builds, but I think there's a lot of reward potential from Torghast that just hasn't been realized yet. Imagine if there was a similar reward structure to island expeditions, like maybe there's a chance for stuff to drop, but you also get a currency to get whatever the heck you want from a loot box or whatever. Heck, if they were to lift that entire reward system, pound for pound, and just dump it into Torghast, well, that would solve the problem of not finding anyone in groups to do islands with. But maybe talking islands is a bad idea. I'd still love to see an official Torghast leaderboard and a challenge mode where you can build up powers for a few floors before they dry you up and you have to just climb as high as you can with whatever you've got. Hopefully we'll see more features like that in 9.1. Like, definitely we won't see it at launch, but it'll be super important that if people aren't pleased with Torghast and what it has to offer, leave feedback, say something, and don't just write it off. Because it would be a big shame to see another potentially cool feature get tossed aside, not just because it wasn't good enough, but because players didn't care enough to want to make it better. There's been a growing concern over tank threat in endgame, not just at high key levels, but across the board. With the exception of Demon Hunters and the best class in the game, other tanks just don't have the sustain that they need to keep up with DPS of similar skill. Fortunately, fixing this requires only a few modifiers that can be hotfixed in at any time, not to mention the 2 additional weeks before Season 1 begins. But of course, the sooner, the better. PvP has also been given a light touch, that already sounds bad, boop. But anyway, it was a light touch with a buff to the 2-piece PvP set bonus meant to diminish the prevalence of using high-end PvE trinkets. Is that enough though? Hard to say, but maybe some of you out there on the toilet and whatnot can help fill us in. Given that there are a few builds left for reiterating and polish, I think we're on track for launch, despite the forever concerns of class balance and whatever there is left that you could say about Covenant switching. It won't be perfect. There are already things I can say that I don't like about Shadowlands. Chief among them is the lack of coolness in part of professions. I've observed that there are still a lot of people feeling lost with the many systems of Shadowlands and how they're connected together, but I'm convinced that once you dive into them and start prioritizing what's important to you, you're going to find the routine and the building of alts to be much more flexible than it has been before. I stand by my earlier statements. I feel much more excited about Shadowlands in the weeks before release than I did for the Battle for Azeroth. I hope you folks join me for some Shadowlands adventures, but until then, that's the show. The other day, the folks at CD Projekt Red announced another delay of Cyberpunk 2077, which was supposed to be out all the way back in April, pushing the release back another 3 weeks to December 10th, 2 days after Season 1 of Shadowlands begins. The backlash was expected, but it was made especially high profile after senior developers shared threats of harm over a video game. It's pretty embarrassing, folks. Like, is that really supposed to motivate developers like these people who are isolated at home working 6-day weeks to release a game on 9 platforms simultaneously? Is that going to get young people excited to join the industry knowing that mouth breathers that only know how to consume content will be breathing down their necks? Was I more angry typing this out than me reading it off the teleprompter? Yeah, but that's still terrible behavior. Not to say that playing Cyberpunk or WoW is mutually exclusive, but man, dude, Cyberpunk fans make WoW fans look like stampeding puppies. This does underline the consequences of delaying games and spending the goodwill that game developers build. It does bring up the topic of pre-ordering games and the possible regrets, but it definitely puts a bad light on gamers overall. If you're upset over a game delay, I get it. You made plans, you put time off work to be part of the experience alongside fellow fans. World of Warcraft is a big part of my livelihood, so the Shadowlands delay ended up disrupting not just fun time, but work time. There's no room for this sort of seething anger though. But don't worry, you and I are gonna get through it, one weekly at a time. Thanks for letting me be a part of your day today. Please drop by over on the Twitch channel. We get lots of folks dropping in to say hi, and everyone's welcome. Now that we have a Shadowlands date, I can slowly roll out helpful Shadowlands guides, so be sure to subscribe for that and all things Warcraft. Like this video too, and consider becoming a valued patron so you can look at stuff that I haven't released yet, eh? Ha ha ha. But otherwise, you guys have been great. I'll see you next week for some more squats and shenanigans. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.